So, Bob, I thought I would lob some balls over the plate for you in an easy fashion for you to hit out of the park in the form of questions from the listeners that are easy for you to answer and are interesting for you to answer. What do you say, Bob?
Wow, I have an easy job.
Anonymous patron says, oh no, wait, I already read that one. Upper tier patron Hannah from London says, is it common to be more angry and resentful at a non-abusive parent than the perpetrating parent? I experienced extreme violence in my childhood. My father was violent. My mother would never defend me from the violence. Despite my dad being the perpetrator, I find that most of my residual anger and hurt is aimed towards my mom and not my dad. Is this common? I wonder if this is ingrained patriarchy, where I blame my woman for not protecting me and let the man off the hook. Bob, what do you think?
You know, your situation is similar to mine growing up, but I never really had much anger at my mom for her not intervening on my behalf or the behalf of my sibs. She did to some degree, but not really. But I had a therapist. My second therapist said to me once, "Well, you got to be angry with your mom for not." And I'd never thought about it before. And I actually don't feel angry with her around that at all now. I have some problems with my mom, but they aren't around that. I don't know what's common. Do we have any data? I don't even know.
Anecdotally, it's very common. And I would find it in all age groups, kids included, where you would have a single mom who was doing her best and divorced an abusive husband and the father of her kids. And the kids would look at Disneyland Dad with admiration and longing.
Right.
But the kids have a lot of trauma and it has to go somewhere. And so it would go towards the mom. And the mom's like, how come I'm getting all the anger and the disobedience and the disdain from these kids when I'm the better parent by far? And how come my ex-husband is getting none of that and he's getting love and admiration? And there are many conceptualizations of this. Sure. One is that you, as a child, even as an adult child, feels safer with the parent that you that is not abusive.
That is safer.
Yeah, and you have anger.
Yeah.
And you feel safer in the presence of the non-abusive parent to express it because you know that parent isn't going to abuse you and you know they're not going to abandon you.
Right.
So your body just naturally needs somewhere to have the anger go, and you absolutely know that you cannot be angry at the abusive person because they could kill you or hurt you or something.
Right.
The other is that it's possible to, Hannah, you're talking about, I sort of let my abusive father off the hook, but my mom, I'm really upset about because she didn't defend me. It's normal to be upset at parents because she was an adult.
Yeah.
She could have done something potentially.
Yeah.
And depending on what happened, it's possible, she did very little, if anything. And another conceptualization is that when you were young, you basically just gave up on your dad. You at some point, you're just like, I no longer care about this man. I don't want his love. I don't want him in my life. I think he's just kind of like a monster that's living in my house. But your mom, you still had hopes for, and you still wanted things from her. You still needed her. And so you're angry at her. And, in the same way that if your mom somewhat disappoints you, but then, I don't know, someone on the bus steals your purse, 10 years later, you're probably going to be more concerned about your mom than the guy who stole the purse, even though the guy who stole the purse was obviously wronging you. Because you're just like, well, I don't know that person, whatever. But we want our moms, our parents, to love us and to protect us, and especially when we still have a connection and a hope for that kind of relationship. And so it's possible that, Hannah, that's what's going on for you. But yeah, I will say it's very common. And yeah, it absolutely could be part of internalized patriarchy to let men off the hook, particularly around parenting. we have this notion that if something went wrong, and this goes way back to Freudian times, it's the mom's fault.
Oh, right. Schizophrenic moms. Remember that?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the father's fault, you know.
Right. How could it be?
But it's this weird paradox because it's like, well, the fact that we're saying, you know, because the reason why they would say it's not the men's fault is just because the men aren't doing any of the parenting, which should be a problem. You know,
yeah.
it's like, at least the mom's doing something.
Right. We see that as a solution, not a problem, but it's definitely a problem.
Right.
Weird.
All right. Patron Sierra from Pennsylvania.
Oh, where?
I don't know.
Oh.
But she says, yay, Philly.
Yay, Philly.
I have come to the realization that I get extremely anxious when yelling occurs, even when not directed at me.
Yeah.
My bosses constantly yell at me or their kids
Really?
or at each other.
Oh, God.
It made me a perfectionist, and I'm scared to go to work sometimes.
Yeah, I'll bet.
My body reacts with constant shaking, a constant urge to pee, and a state of fight or flight. When I was growing up, my parents would constantly yell at each other
right.
and at me and my siblings. We are accustomed to it and have lived by the philosophy that says yelling is a part of life.
Yeah.
As clinicians, what is your take on this philosophy? Is there a better way I can communicate my anxiety to others without seeming weak? Bob, what do you think?
Well, let's be clear. You're not weak. You are having a trauma response, and a completely understandable one, even if you didn't grow up in that kind of, in yelling. It's wrong to go to work and be yelled at or have to be subject to temper tantrums from anybody, bosses included. Maybe you need a different job.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, as Bob is saying, you are experiencing a trauma response, and the fight, flight, freeze, appease, faint is happening to you. You're having an adrenaline surge that anyone would have when they're being yelled at, but particularly if you have trauma around that, you're going to be even more sensitive to that potentially. Makes total sense that you're having that feeling. And, you know, you point out this constant urge to pee when you're under that stress, and that's something that people don't talk about, but I've heard that before. Absolutely. Have you ever heard that before?
I have heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah. There's something about, you know, you scare the piss out of someone,
Yep.
you scare the crap. Yeah, there's a reason why we have these
Yes,
things. It's because
there is.
when we're afraid, and other animals do this too,
Yep.
that the theory goes is that we're getting ready to run,
Yeah.
and you need to be light on your feet.
Yep. So offload as much unnecessary as, so pee.
Right. And just, you know, get rid of it and get moving. Also, there's probably also something related to like sphincter control under stress, or,
Right.
you know, who knows, but
Yeah.
so that's normal and not weak.
No.
You know, is there any way I can communicate my anxiety to others without seeming weak? You're not weak for being abused. I know that's what you've internalized, and from society as well, but that is not the narrative. You're a victim. You know, if someone runs me over with their car as I'm walking across a legal crosswalk, I'm not weak because I'm on the ground crying and I have a broken leg. I'm a victim of someone else's crime. If you are having a fight or flight reaction to people yelling at you at work unfairly, I'm quite sure, that doesn't make you weak.
No.
And if you communicate that you have anxiety about this, that doesn't make you weak. If I go to the hospital with a broken leg because someone ran over me, I'm not weak because I'm asking for help. I'm a victim of a crime. I'm a victim of hostility or wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And I am asking people to help me,
Right.
or I'm asking people to stop running over me with a car. Someone's yelling at you all the time and you're like, you're freaking me out.
Yeah.
That's not weakness.
Right.
That's human reactivity. That is normal, particularly given your history. So, you know, I understand why you think that way. It's because society looks at it that way, and also internalized victimhood, if you will. So don't tell yourself that.
No.
And what do I think of the philosophy that yelling is a part of life? No, yelling is not a part of life.
It is not a part of life.
I almost have no yelling in my life. I don't yell. People in my life don't yell at me. My parents didn't yell ever, really, or barely ever. In fact, in my household, it was high crime to say, shut up.
Oh, yeah.
Because, we were 4 siblings. There was a lot of urges to tell each other to shut up. And saying shut up was a swear word when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So we did not grow up with yelling, and I'm not accustomed to it. And when it happens to me, it's like, what is happening right now? So yelling is not a part of life. That is what perpetrators will say. That's what people will say when they grow up with all that yelling, because it feels like that's a part of life.
Right.
But it is not a part of life. Communicating your feelings in a healthy way could be a part of life. Having feelings is a part of life. Wanting to yell is a part of life, but actual yelling is not an inherent part of human existence.
No.
And to also parrot what Bob was saying of maybe change jobs. I know that's an easy answer, but that's my urge too. I don't know what your circumstance is, but you deserve better.
Yeah.
And I've done this before, but I've been on both sides. So on one hand, there are 2 instances where I can think of where I was yelled at by a boss and did something. Well, one time I was working at Foot Locker. I think we were talking about this not too long ago, down in Westlake Mall, downtown Seattle.
Oh, that's right.
In the basement.
Yeah.
And I had a business degree, and I was not getting any sort of work. And I saw this job in the newspaper, and I thought, I need money.
Yeah.
And it was a terrible job. I was on my feet all day. I worked 6 days a week. I got paid something like $2.50 an hour because it was only commission or something like that.
Wow.
And this boss was, he was generally okay, but then something happened. And mind you, I'm like 2 weeks into the job, and I've never sold shoes before. I've never probably even sold retail before. And so I guess I'm probably making some mistakes, but I don't remember them being like egregious, because it wasn't that complicated of a job.
How could they be egregious?
Yeah. And he screamed at me. Like he was like in my face, like red in the, in the face, just yelling at me. And I remember just thinking like, well, I'm quitting. Because yelling is not a part of life, and I don't deserve this crap. And so in my head, I was like, well, that's the end of this job, because the thing that I don't know where I learned this, but early in life, I learned that the way people treat you, it's only getting worse. So if someone yells at you at week 2, they're going to yell at you even more by year 2.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not going to change this guy. So I'm gone. I don't deserve this.
Right.
And I did. And I did not quit in a convenient time for him. I just quit because, I gave it another couple of weeks because I needed that extra time. And then on the way out of my shift, I said, by the way, I'm done. I'm quitting. He's like, are you giving notice? No, I'm done. I didn't yell at him. No. But I just said, I'm done.
You let him know.
Yeah, I'm leaving. You can take, I didn't say it, but you can take this job and shove it.
Yeah.
And you know what you did to me is kind of the vibe. It's like, you know who you are, and you know why I'm quitting. Yeah. I didn't say it, but I said, I'm sorry, I'm leaving.
Yep.
Because no one deserves to be yelled at.
They don't.
The other situation, I didn't quit, but I was recently, I don't know if I was an intern, but I was a young therapist, novice therapist, and my supervisor, who I liked, she was really stressed out, and I went in. So she just got it out of a meeting where they were yelling at her, I'm guessing, about productivity, making sure that the therapists are seeing like 35 clients, billable hours, billable hours. And there's always that tension between upper admin trying to push labor to produce more money, and the labor saying, like, in order for me to do my job effectively, I can't be working with that many people. I need to do my paperwork. I need some downtime, blah, blah, blah. So it trickles down, goes to the supervisors. And then right after that meeting, I have a supervision meeting, an hour-long supervision meeting with her. And I sit down, I'm like, normally, I can trust her and we can just have a normal conversation and having it go well. But she just starts laying into me about productivity. And I'm like, and I knew in my head that she had never, there's always a kind of a suggestion of like, try to get your billable hours up, but there was never a mandate. And none of the therapists were at the quota that she was now saying I was negligent of achieving. Oh, geez. And it wasn't just, this talk, it was also very emotionally abusive to me, to the point where my heart started to race. Yeah. I'm having a fight or flight reaction. Right. Like, like what Sierra was having. And so this is an hour-long supervision meeting, and I'm kind of trying to defend myself, but I'm also like, I don't understand what this is, so irrational that I don't, but she's just really, and again, fight or flight reaction. 25 minutes into the meeting, I'm like, I just stood up and walked out.
Good for you.
In the middle, I'm like 28. I'm a novice therapist. And where do I get off? But I was just like, fuck, I'm not dealing with this.
Good for you.
Like, you're unreasonable, you're out of control, you're being abusive, and I'm just not going to do it. And I'm trying to defend myself, and I want to tell you off, but I'm just going to communicate by walking out in mid-sentence. And I just said, well, I'm leaving, and I just walked out. And that was a big deal. Part of it, I did it because I was freaking out so much, honestly. I was actually like panicking.
Yeah.
But I was also like, my mom didn't raise me to put up with this.
Self-respect demands this kind of response.
Right.
Yeah.
And she later apologized, by the way.
Good.
But so I tell you this, Sierra, because I want you to know that you deserve my kind of attitude, which is you don't deserve that, and you can walk out. And I've worked with a lot of clients on this very issue, particularly women, who just put up with the abuse. And there's this notion of like, well, it's part of the job. And I'm like, no, it's not. Because if you have an abuse, there's so many people I know who, if their boyfriend or husband talked to them the way their boss would, they would divorce them. But somehow, because it's their boss, they're like, well, that's just how he is, or that's what this industry is like. It's high pressure. And I'm thinking, no, it's not. And you don't have to, and why? And your life is deteriorating because of this abuse. You're not sleeping at night. You have low self-esteem. You have a traumatic physical response every time this person walks in the room. Like, you're in an abusive relationship in the exact same manner of an abusive marriage. And somehow that's like a novel idea to people. And I feel like, and we even glorify this, like movies like, what's that Prada movie with...
The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah. I haven't seen the movie, but from what I understand, the boss is like abusive. And we look up to people like, oh, it's, she's a taskmaster. She demands greatness. Or Michael Jordan, for example. Did you watch the documentary?
I did.
And how abusive he was to his teammates. Just disgusting. Yeah. He's treating other people like crap. And fans of Michael Jordan are just like, well, but that's what it takes to be great. Well, no, it doesn't.
Actually, it's not true.
There are plenty of people who are great who were not that way to people.
Yeah.
And Michael Jordan isn't the only great basketball player, by the way, and he would have been crap without Pippen and everyone else.
Oh, yeah.
So, as evidenced by him being on the Wizard, anyway, don't even get started. But there's so many people that talk about like, but that's a part of greatness. Like, it's this American ideal.
That's weird, isn't it? That mythology.
Yeah.
That greatness both requires and also consents to abuse.
Yeah, like Steve Jobs. He's notorious for being abusive. Well, but he was a genius.
Genius.
It's like, well, Wozniak was a genius, probably more so than Steve Jobs, and he was the nicest person on the planet. Yeah. Or at least from reports. Right. So how does that work out?
Right.
And guess who gets to be on the stage riding on the coattails of Wozniak and everyone else around him?
Yeah.
Like in this totally fake way.
Yeah.
The a-hole.
Yeah.
So, no, being an a-hole is not part of the job and not okay.
It's not.
And even if it was, like if I was on the Bulls under Jordan, I would have said, I don't care about a ring. I don't want to live this way.
Yeah.
Life is too short then to deal with this kind of abuse.
A piece of metal? Fuck.
Yeah. Like during practice, Jordan would bully other people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
And so it's not okay. Right. And now, on the other hand, I had power in that situation. I could leave the Foot Locker job.
Right.
I could walk out of that supervision meeting thinking, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get fired.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure I could find another job if I got fired. But there are other situations, like when I was getting my doctorate, where I did not have power and I was being abused by multiple people.
Really?
who were in charge of my life. Cause you're in total dependency when you're in graduate school.
You are.
And it's even increased when, when you have so you're in a graduate school and you have professors who are abusing you, you're even more dependent on them, because if they're being nice to you, then you know that you can kind of depend on them to be fair. But if they're being mean to you, then you need to be even, at least one of the way that I approached it was, I need to be even nicer to them, because they already are against me in some weird way. Mm-hmm. Whereas the teachers who are on my side, I can push back a little bit and know that they'll probably be okay with that.
Safer.
So it's this inverse relationship of the meaner they were to me, the nicer I was to them.
Yeah. Right.
And so I'm not saying in all situations, I'm a guy, and that's another part of this equation, that, privilege. And so, but I will acknowledge there are some situations where you don't have the power to push back.
No, we don't know.
And I don't know what to do in a situation like that.
We don't know Sierra's situation. She might be in this, right.
But I will tell you that overall, you deserve to not be treated that way.
Absolutely. Hey, one final thought on that. One of the things to remember about emotion is that they don't just motivate behavior or give us information about a situation. They actually have a communicative function, and each emotion communicates something different. So like fear communicates there's a possibility of danger around. So if somebody's afraid, other people will start looking for danger. That's the communicative function of fear. And shame has a communicative function, and guilt has a shame's communicative function is remorse, right? If I'm ashamed, that demonstrates in a felt sense way that I feel bad about what happened. And so that will have an impact on the world around me. They'll like, oh, okay, well, he's sorry, right? Anger's communicative function is to get the world to back off. So you're having a natural...
And to right a wrong, to right injustice.
Well, that's its motivational function, is to right a wrong. But its communicative function, in other words, its influential function on other humans, is to get them to back off. And here you are, you're in an impossible situation where you work for your bosses, whoever the yellers are. And so you can't, short of leaving, you can't actually back off. So you're forced to be in this situation where you can't leave, and it's what your body's natural response is to back off or get away or move away. Like Mama Bear is the most scary bear in the forest, because she's protecting her young, and she's powerful and strong, and we know that that's dangerous, and so we will naturally back off. And here you are with this jerk that's yelling, and you can't, because...
Are you good at pushing back on abusive superiors?
I don't have any anymore. No, I'm terrible at it.
What, like in the past?
No, I've never been good at it.
What would you do?
Kowtow, crumble,
and
put up with it.
Blame yourself or something? Yeah,
I do that. I might shame myself publicly too, in order to create good graces.
But you've engineered your career such that it's been a long time since that's happened. I mean, when was the last time that happened to you?
The last time I had a boss.
Yeah, the last time you had a boss.
Oh, that's got to be
community psychiatric clinic back in.
No, I had a job until
when you were with Linehan, you kind of had bosses essentially.
She was my boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I left that clinic in 2008. That's the last time I had a boss.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you know how, Bob, you'll sometimes say, well, one of the reasons why I'm friends with you, Kirk, is because you model for me how to care about yourself and that kind of...
Yeah.
And that's a novel idea to me, that when I think of Sierra, I think of, and I've done this for other women, honestly, because I think this is a gendered thing, that I do feel like as a man, I have the right, and I have the privilege, and I have the chutzpah, if you will, to say, screw you. I don't care if you're my boss. Like, no. And I feel like a lot of women in particular, but obviously people of all genders, don't even feel like that's an option. And when I model it, I want people to absorb that. I want everyone out there, I want to give you my arrogant maleness, which is sometimes a good thing.
Yeah.
Like to be an arrogant man or to embody arrogant masculinity, there's pros and cons. And one of the pros is that you can walk out in the middle of a supervision meeting as you're being abused and go like, I'm just not going to deal with this.
Yeah.
So peace. And I've done this before for other, people that I was mentoring, and I want to give it to you, Sierra. And the thing that the other thing I'll say, in addition to what I've already said, is anger is good, as Bob is essentially saying. Anger, particularly for people who are chronically put upon and treated unfairly by others, understand that your anger is good. Yeah. Anger is as good as happiness. It's as good as sadness when you're sad. Anger is wonderful.
Yeah.
And when I get angry, I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel righteous.
Right.
I feel powerful. I feel like, I don't know. It's when I feel it, I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, again, particularly women, because of the way they're raised, deserve to connect with their anger. And there's so many people who are just completely disconnected from their anger. And so if you aren't getting angry at least once a day, you're probably suppressing something.
Are you talking about Sierra's situation?
Everyone, really. Oh. But particularly if you're out in the world, because there's always someone that's pissing me off in the world. People who don't use their blinkers.
Yeah.
People who are on their phone as they're walking on the sidewalk and I have to get out of the way. People who
don't get vaccinated.
People who don't show up on time. People who are incompetent. And so if you're not getting angry, there's something wrong with you. And so getting in touch with that is a good thing. Don't be afraid of it. Anger is good. What do you do with the anger, though? That's the thing.
Yeah.
And so when your bosses are yelling at you, if you're not getting angry, you're probably suppressing it, which is not healthy. And you're not listening to your anger. Your anger is telling you something. Bob framed it as get away from me. The way that I would frame it, which is akin to what you're saying, is anger is a response of fairness. Something is unfair is happening. Like either someone's in your face and it's unfair, or they're taking something from you, or, some injustice is happening, and anger motivates us to right the injustice, either by, getting away from someone, or by taking something back that someone took from us, or, being treated unfairly. And so when you're angry and you are in touch with it and you listen to it, it is telling you what you need. Now, you might not be able to do anything, like when I was in my doctorate program and people were treating me unfairly and I was angry, I couldn't push back because I didn't have any power, and I just wanted to get through the program. So, I'm not saying there's always this, but I knew I was angry, and I guess my anger motivated me to think about it more and to talk with other people, get some support. But know that your anger is good and you should listen to it. And, so, yeah. And I hope I can inspire people to get angry. And the other thing I'll say is that if you have been suppressing your anger for your whole life, the first phase of anger identification and expression will be that of a child. So be okay with how unbridled and weird and potentially immature it is. But that's okay. Don't go back into your shell just because your anger is weird when it first comes out. It's going to get weird.
Growing pains.
Yeah. So you have to go through that, because, that's the only way to get to a more differentiated sense of anger. Anyway.
Sierra, good luck.
Yeah. And let us know how you're doing. All right, let's take a break. What do you say, Bob?
Yes.
All right, we're back from the break. Let's do an OPP, an old patron praise, for people that have been patrons since July of 2018.
Wow.
We have Kira from Los Angeles, who I think I've communicated with, if I'm not mistaken. We have Kimberly from Santa Fe, New Mexico. You ever been to Santa Fe?
No.
It's cute.
Oh.
Cute little, lots of art. They have this little town square that looks like old Mexico kind of thing. We have Karen from Denmark, DK. Do you think that's Denmark?
I think it's Denmark.
We got Nina from Edmonton, Alberta.
Wow.
Christine from Denver. I think I've communicated with Christine from Denver. We got Gazal from Lomita, California. We got Kurt from Gainesville, Florida. We got Scott from Rosewater, Australia. We have Riley from God knows where. We have Rebecca from Bellevue, Washington.
Hey, Bellevue.
Good old Bellevue, where the podwife was born and raised.
Oh.
We got Eve from Renton, Washington, where I was born.
Hey, Renton.
We got Dan from Calgary, Alberta. We got Amanda from Van Wert, Ohio.
Wow.
Did you ever go to Ohio's close to Pennsylvania, right?
It is next state.
Did you
west.
go there very often?
I've been through Ohio. I don't think I've ever spent any time there.
I always think it's just farmland. Is that true?
Well, yeah, I think most of Ohio is flat farmland. Yeah.
Okay, I guess most states are mostly flat farmland.
Coastal states, maybe less.
Jessica from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Been
Oh,
there?
I know Hershey. Sure.
What's that like? What's Hershey like?
Well, it smells like chocolate because they have the big chocolate factory there.
They do?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Isn't Hershey named after a dude?
Yeah, Milton Hershey is also the guy who founded the Hershey Chocolate Company.
And then they named the town after him?
They named the town after him. And there's a really fun amusement park there. And yeah, it's nice there.
Shalina from Mercer Island, Washington.
Hey, Mercer Island.
Nearby here. Emma from London, Great Britain. We got Stephanie from Blairsville, Georgia. Blairsville. I don't know, something kind of fun about that. Mm-hmm. Stephanie from Utah, West Bountiful, Utah.
Oh, Bountiful, yeah.
West Bountiful, though.
Oh, sorry.
Have you been there to Bountiful, Utah?
No, but I like that name.
Cassandra from Bloomington, Indiana. Tanya from Los Angeles. Sarah from Los Angeles.
Wow, L.A.
Kelly from Halifax.
Oh, I've been there.
What's that like? Isn't that kind of like Maine or something?
It's Nova Scotia, so it's northeast of Maine.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking of like lobsters from Halifax.
Yeah. It's like that. Yeah.
Mia from Hillside, California, and Abby from Christchurch, New Zealand.
Wow.
So thank you all for being patrons all the way since July 2018.
I have a colleague that's from Christchurch, New Zealand.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe they know each other.
Good friend of mine, Emily.
All right. Patron Molly says, I was wondering what kinds of things you think about as clients disclose awful things to you, like childhood sexual abuse, neglect, and so on. Do you use any coping skills in the moment for yourself to protect from vicarious trauma? Bob, what do you think?
I don't think of things. I don't have... My practice hasn't specialized in working with folks who've had a lot of trauma. So I haven't suffered vicarious traumatization, but I have listened to some awful things that happen that would make anybody horrified and sad. But I don't need to do anything special to cope with it because this is my experience. I've been a therapist for almost 30 plus years, a little more than 30 years. And early on, I developed a capacity to sort of bracket work and leave work at work. So it doesn't generally haunt me. So don't get me wrong. I think about my clients all the time. Current clients and past clients. I was thinking about a past client this morning, lovely young woman. I think about my clients all the time. And, but I don't, even the ones that have had severe trauma who have used their therapy to, work that through. I haven't ever been traumatized by it. I just have a facility for putting brackets around it so that it begins and ends pretty much at work.
Yeah, me too. I think this is somehow a weird myth or a notion that feels natural to people that aren't in the industry, mm-hmm. who will think, how do you deal? You hear that question, how do you deal with hearing those stories?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, huh? What do you mean? Like, it's not hard.
It's not hard.
And I wouldn't even say I bracket it, because that implies somehow if I heard these stories in my personal life, I would somehow be destroyed, and I'm not.
No. Right. Yeah, it doesn't. Right. It's true.
I don't need to bracket anything because it just doesn't.
It just.
I mean, like you said, I'm sad and I'm with someone and I'm horrified.
Oh.
And, there are some stories that'll really kind of get me. but it doesn't take a toll for whatever reason. I might think about them later, but I'm not like hurt.
Have you seen much vicarious? They used to write about it a lot. Is it still a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's still a thing. The research topic taglines are vicarious trauma or secondary trauma or secondary PTSD, which is a thing. And there's a number of things that you kind of touched on. One is that you and I don't specialize in that kind of work.
Don't, right.
And so we're not necessarily hearing a lot of stories about it, but we have obviously and do. Like I've trained people who work at Dawson Place, which is up in Everett, and the agency is specialized in children who are sexually abused. And so the children come in and are there specifically because of that. It's not like they randomly come in, they're referred there because they were recently sexually abused, usually by someone in their family. And the model of Dawson Place is that not only do you have the family therapists and the child specialists, but you have the psychiatrist in the same building, and you also have the police officers and the prosecutors and the defense lawyers all in the same building. So everyone communicates with each other to support the victim.
The defense lawyers, like the
yeah. Well, I think, but even the prosecutors too, as well. Like when you work at Dawson, at least back in the day when I was training people who worked there, it's a wraparound service because often the therapist isn't in communication with the prosecutor, who isn't in communication with, because in order to support the victim, you want to prosecute the perpetrator.
Sure.
You need a story from the victim.
Yeah.
And to get the story, it's kind of hard if they're 5, right? And so you need, if you're a therapist and you're there to treat, and you're also kind of there to advocate for the child and advocate for justice to put this person behind bars, then you need to know special techniques of interviewing. So you're not inducing the client to believe certain things. There's certain techniques. The other thing is as a therapist, you can advocate through the legal process of, no, this child should not be on the stand, that kind of stuff. And the family can be involved. It's a really great model. The problem though is, as a therapist, you could have like 35 hours a week of listen, and it's your job to extract these stories in a therapeutic manner and possibly a legal manner of sexual abuse, detailed stories.
Right.
And it always takes a toll. And this agency does some things. I think they probably deserve to do more, but they'll do, they recognize vicarious trauma and secondary PTSD. And in of the trainees I've seen go through there, I would see more than half midway through their time, like 6-9 months into it, they are significantly impacted, depressed, anxious, can't sleep, don't like their job anymore, having a hard time with compassion because they're burnt out.
They're burnt out,
which is another term that's similar, if not the same, to vicarious trauma as burnout. And
compassion fatigue.
Right.
Yeah.
And it can be rough. We're talking like suicidality and depression for these clinicians.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I wonder though if you and I, because I think that I just can't imagine it getting to me. I think that when I hear the stories, I'm horrified, but I wasn't abused in that way. I think that's another susceptibility factor, is that if you were sexually abused yourself, obviously, then
you might.
It's going to trigger that.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I didn't have that. So when I hear the stories, I'm horrified and care and have a lot of compassion, but I'm not afraid. It doesn't trigger. And that's part of vicarious trauma and secondary PTSD is that you are being traumatized.
Right.
As you're hearing the story, you have a fight or flight reaction.
Yeah, that's the
precipitating factor in developing any kind of PTSD, secondary or otherwise, is a feeling of terror. And when I hear these stories, I don't feel the terror. I feel bad and I'm angry and I'm affected, but I'm not personally afraid. You know what I mean? So yeah, but you're saying, do we use any coping skills? Well, if the kind of skills that I've worked with my trainees are thus: one is taking more vacations and advocating for more breaks. If you're having compassion fatigue, one of the only things you can do for that is to take time off.
Yeah.
You need time away. You need to stop hearing those stories, and that needs to be kind of worked into your schedule.
Like as a regular preventative thing.
Probably. The other thing is to know what you're susceptible to. Bob and I are not, so we're okay with whatever comes our way. But if you're susceptible to this kind of thing, you probably want to be very careful about how many of these clients you take on. And that's okay. But I will say that, in summary, the notion that somehow listening to people's quote-unquote problems is somehow laborious or takes a toll on therapists is just not generally true.
Yeah. That hasn't been my experience either.
Yeah. And I think the reason why people have this myth is that when you're not a therapist and you're not particularly a good listener, it is laborious because you're listening to someone talk about their problems and you somehow feel responsible or you're annoyed that they're talking a lot about themselves or something. And yeah, I guess if you're approaching it from that perspective, then it's laborious. But if you approach it the way Bob and I do, it's just like, I'm listening and I'm here for you. And this is why I'm on this planet, is to, be helpful and nice to other people. And so I'm listening. But I'm not personally threatened. There's not a danger to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not particularly responsible even for clients necessarily in the moment for changing the pain that they're in from that. And when you release yourself from that notion of being responsible, then it's not a labor. You're listening and you're there and you're in the zone. And when they walk out of your office, you get a drink of water and you see the next client. It's not an emergency, and I think that's another part of it that maybe lay people have or novice therapists have. It's like, but if someone's telling you about their traumas, you got to do something. It's like, no, you don't. There's a lot in fact, trying to do something will just screw it up. Listen, be with someone,
Let's not underestimate the value of listening to somebody and being present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone falls off their bike and they skin their knee and they're sad and they're crying and they're on the ground. You can't reverse time.
Yeah.
And you don't want to tell them, well, be more careful next time while they're crying.
Oh.
You just sit next to them and say, ow, that looks like it hurts.
Right.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I've been there before. Ow.
Yeah.
Look at that. Eesh. How you feeling? It's not complicated. And when you complicate it, it makes it more laborious, which makes it potentially more damaging.
Right.
Up at your patron, Diane from California, she says, what does doing the work mean in therapy? I had a former therapist I saw for 5 months. He ended up taking a job out of state and I no longer could see him. All the time, he would refer to doing the work in therapy. And when we finished up and I found another therapist, he said, I am so glad you are going to continue to do the work. I always thought it just meant showing up and being present, but I never got to ask him what he meant by doing the work in therapy. Bob, what do you think it means?
Send him an email. Find out what he thinks. I don't like the phrase.
Why?
It's kitschy. It's cliche. It's like a club thing. Like a we're in this club and we do the work. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's trite. It minimizes and patronize. I don't like this word. I don't like this phrase.
What do you think it means?
I don't know what they mean. I could imagine what would. It sounds pompous to me.
But what do you think it means?
Arrogant.
What do you think it means?
I guess it means using therapy properly. I don't know. When I think about all right, what am I hoping for my clients? Is that when we're together, that they're present, that they're free to access their inner experience, and to the degree that they wish or need to communicate it, to let me know what it is, or if it's couple therapy, to let their partner know. I'd say that's doing work. Like that's what I think the purpose is. Like the outcome from that, I think, is healing. I certainly hope it is. If I should deliver pizza if it isn't, because at least when you deliver pizza, the recipient's very happy.
Yeah.
Right. It's too buzzy to me. I don't like it. Do you like it? How do you feel about it?
I'm neutral.
Oh, well, that's nice.
But I don't use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think doing the work can mean a lot of things. As you say, you're thinking, I think it always means showing up and being present. And Bob was basically kind of alluding to this. Of like, when I think of doing the work, I also think of AA. People will say, you got to go through the steps. You got to show up.
Yeah.
You got to do the work. And I think it implies, look, this isn't always easy. It's not like a fun walk in the park. You got to do the work. You got to get up and make this happen, and it'll benefit you in the end.
Yeah.
It's like CrossFit. You got to do the work.
Yeah.
You can't get those muscles and health by just sitting on the couch. You got to do the work. That kind of, I think it kind of has that implication. But I also think it has the meaning of quote unquote processing feelings, which is another catchword.
You do not like that.
Have I said that?
Yes.
I don't like, yeah. I don't think I'm as adamantly against it as you are against doing the work, but yeah, when people say process feelings, the reason why I don't like that phrase is because I feel like a lot of therapists just say that because they don't know what else to say, and they don't even know what they mean by it.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah. And maybe that's doing the work. Maybe that's another thing that people will say when they don't have any theoretical understanding of how therapy works.
That's my problem with it.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, because this person is actually having a really important question.
Yeah.
Which is, what does that mean? Because if it's important, I might want to do it.
Yeah. Now, if a therapist has a explanation of what that means,
yeah, great.
Then great. But I feel like a lot of therapists are walking around just with these catchphrases of, we're going to process feelings and we're going to do the work, and they don't have any idea what they're talking about. Yeah, it's just these things that they think will justify what they're doing.
Send them an email, ask them.
Yeah. Well, you have a current therapist where it's happening right now, so just ask your therapist what does doing the work mean.
Well, but that person's going to have their opinion, and the old therapist, anyways.
I think another possible thing it can mean is introspection, even when things aren't pleasant. Like, I have to do the work by recognizing that sometimes I am too dependent on other people. That's kind of like doing the work.
Yeah.
I think also doing the work can mean trying to change yourself in ways that don't feel quite comfortable. That's doing the work. If I'm too negative or something about my spouse, doing the work is like, okay, try to be more positive, or don't jump to conclusions. Just doing the work. It's hard. Trauma recovery can be quote unquote doing the work, right? You got to go through the exposure. That's work.
That's definitely hard.
No pain, no gain.
Yep.
I think like CBT or DBT, even skills work, it's work, right? When people come to your DBT class, it's not all fun and games, right? It's like you gotta learn the skill. You gotta do the work.
You gotta practice.
Implying also that when you do the work, you benefit from it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be the point, right?
Yeah. So I think that's often what people mean. But yeah, I mean, like Bob said, you should just ask, if you're curious, because every therapist is going to use it differently, I think. And so you just want to say, when you say continue to do the work, what do you mean by that exactly?
Yeah.
And honestly, up to your patient Diane from California, this is possibly related to a larger topic of what we call the Therapeutic Alliance, which involves task, goals, and bonds, which means that the first two of goals and tasks, all the clients out there, you should absolutely know what goals are being addressed by you and your therapist. You should know, like, this is what I'm here to do, to achieve, and my therapist knows that this is why I'm here and agrees that that's a good goal. Now, some people blanch at that. It's like, well, goals, that sounds so concrete. No, you should have a goal of, I want to have higher self-esteem. I want to have different schemas or eliminate maladaptive schemas. I want to have happier relationships. I want to have greater well-being. I want to have a more fulfilling life. I want to have more meaning in my life. I want to feel loved. Like, these are goals. They might not be like, I want to quit smoking or something, but they're goals. And so if you don't have a clear understanding with your therapist about what goals you are working on every single time in therapy at every minute, then something's wrong. One, there could be a massive misunderstanding, and two, you could just be like yammering in therapy without any kind of like understanding of why you're there. It's very important to know. Again, it could be very amorphous. Like, I want to know the meaning of my life, something like that. So understand the goals, and you also should know the tasks. So, and this is what doing the work implies, is that implies this is the task that you do to meet the goal. And so if you're having a question, Diane, of like, I don't know what they mean by doing the work, then you don't have an understanding between the two of you about the tasks of therapy. They're using a jargon that you don't understand what they mean by it. Yeah, you're making a face.
Bobby, no like.
What don't you like about it?
It's vague.
Yeah.
And kitschy.
Yeah. Anonymous patron says, I would like to share a recent experience with my therapist that has left me very unsettled. She knew I have long been employed by a major airline. She said she once took a flight on my airline and told me it was one of the worst flights she had ever experienced. I felt so embarrassed, and I apologized that she experienced that with my airline.
Oh.
She told me that she had even been warned from a good friend in that city not to expect much from our airline. When I talked to my therapist at our next meeting as to possible reasons for her bad experience with my airline, it was quite clear that she would never fly with our airline again. This exchange has made me feel so awkward that it has now interfered with my sense of connection with her. Bob, what should she do?
Bring it up. It's probably hard to bring it up. You might have some hurt feelings or some anger or some wondering about some angst about how does she see you because that's your employer or whatever.
And it's okay to have pride in your employment.
Yeah. It's also okay to have your own experience of things that's different from another person's, including the therapist's.
Yeah.
How do you feel about knowing in as much detail, at least as you're describing here, how do you feel about knowing that much? Is it helpful to you? Is it relevant to the kinds of things that you want to accomplish in therapy or want to address in therapy? Talk about it.
Yeah.
You know me, that's all I ever say to anybody.
Yeah, 100% agree. But as you said, it might get a little hairy because it sounds like the therapist is kind of rigid about this whole thing. And, a good therapist would say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have talked about, maybe I'm too rigid about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like a good therapist would say, I'm sorry that I put it that way. Like, I could see why that would hurt your feelings. That's on me. But the fact that she did it in the first place, she might go like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Your airline is just a piece of crap. That's the attitude we're getting from her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the vibe of this email, right?
Yeah. So I don't know about the therapist. I obviously wasn't there, but I think we have enough detail from this,
to make some guesses.
Yeah, that this therapist doesn't understand proper self-disclosure.
Yeah.
Why would you talk about this?
I don't know why it's important.
What would be the purpose of this?
I don't know.
You're a therapist helping someone, and she talks about an airline, and you're like, oh my God, when I was on your... What are you doing?
How is this helpful in life?
Like, just stop it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just so ridiculous. So with research, with proper and helpful self-disclosure, it needs to be brief, it needs to be helpful, and it needs to be processed. So it sounds like it might have been brief-ish. Clearly it wasn't helpful.
Yeah.
It doesn't, unless there's some secret strategic reason why the therapist is doing this, which I can't imagine that being true. And three, it clearly was not processed. She's still like upset about it.
Yeah.
And so, it blows my mind when I hear about these stories. I'm like, what are you doing? Your client isn't just some coworker that you're shooting the shit with. Like, this is you're a strategic clinician who is there to do a job. You're not there to just like talk about your feelings. It'd be like your client comes in and is like, oh, I'm going through a divorce and it's just really hard. My wife is, she cheated on me, and she's just really insensitive. Oh, women, I was married once and she cheated on me. I mean, boy, it's like, okay, if it's okay that you have those feelings as a therapist, but
what are you gonna do? Right?
Not the time.
Yeah,
not the time.
Not the time.
So anyway, let's go to another. Patron Elizabeth says, what do I need to do to not fall back into friendships that are not aligning with me? I have a few surface level fun type friendships, but I let a lot of things slide that don't support my values.
Oh.
I feel like I've outgrown their behavior that they are exhibiting, but I find it extremely difficult to cut the relationship off because I have fun with them, and B, it's difficult to have serious conversation with them because I don't think they would change or understand what I'm saying. I'm just afraid of them pushing back, and then I will get rejected if I bring this up. What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, right. Sounds like you are afraid to speak to them candidly about your experience of your relationship, and you're either going to fall into keeping things status quo or ending relationships. But I don't know if you have enough data here to support the ending the relationship thing. And as scary as it might be, if you were in my DBT class, we would do the following. We would say, well, think about the three different possible goals here, and then prioritize them. The first one is, what's my objective? So what do I want the other person to do? What do I want them to know about me? What behavior do they do that I want them to change? And the second one is, how do I want them to feel about me as a result of going through this, having a conversation? So not how do I want them to see me in the big picture, but how do I want to see me when our interaction, when we talk about the thing, when it's over, how do I want them to view me? And then third, how do I want to view myself when it's all said and done? And go through those three, kind of figure out what those three things are, and then rank them 1, 2, 3. The idea is that you, from your centered place, or your wise mind, as they say in DBT land, from your wise mind, you can make a determination about which of those three is the most important to you, and which is second, and which is third. And the reason to do that is because if you have a habit, and it sounds from the email, it sounds like you have a habit of privileging relationships. In other words, putting a view of the other person's needs or wants ahead of your own, just sort of reflexively or automatically, then you're apt to, make choices that you don't like in the long run, or that you feel like, So it might be that self-respect is more important than the relationship, which doesn't mean that the relationship isn't necessarily important. It means that when push comes to shove, if you have to give up one, give up the one that's least important to you. I've done this many, many times over 20 some years of teaching DBT skills. And one of the things that I've discovered is that if people are willing to break a situation down into and figure out what their three different goals are: objective, relationship, and self-respect, figure it out, they're often able to kind of distill for themselves in a simple way what they need or want to have happen. And it actually makes hairy things straightforward. So that's cool. And then
like you walk them through those steps, and they're like, okay, well, self-respect is I can't respect myself and listen to them talk about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what are the other ones?
My objective.
My objective is I want to be friends with them, but I don't want to hear that stuff anymore.
I want them to stop this behavior, say.
Yeah.
And then relationship is, how do I want them to see me as a result of our conversation? So if I yell at them, they're going to see me a certain way. If I swear at them, they're going to see me a certain way. If I grovel, they're going to see me a certain way, right? How do I want them to see me, and what do I have to do to get that, right? Well, I want them to feel respected, right? But I also want them to know that I'm serious. So I probably need to be firm and polite, right? Okay, great. And of those three, which is the most important while thinking about this situation? I really want them to knock this behavior off. Or, I really need to feel good about myself when it's all said and done, even if they don't knock the behavior off, right? Okay, well, at least I know that I turned over every stone. And lots of times people need that. They need to know they turned over every stone before they can throw in the towel in a relationship. So it could be that that's the thing that's most important. And then my behavior is going to be influenced by, first and foremost, maintaining my self-respect, right? Or getting what I want. So I'm going to be straightforward and clear. And so the second thing that seems to be really helpful is to rehearse it And what I found, good rule of thumb, is if you rehearse the thing 5 times, you're apt to really be able to carry it through, even stuff that's scaring the hell out of you. Like, it's really scary. I can't imagine doing it. And I go through it, rehearse it 5 times. I'm like, oh, it's not that hard. I mean, I can do it. And then the third thing is write it down. Write down what you want to say, and don't rely on memory. Because if you rely on memory when you're in an emotional situation, you won't be able to remember anything. So Conan O'Brien uses cue cards for his show. We can use cue cards too.
That'd be funny. You bring like a cue card guy.
Yeah, right.
Standing over the shoulder.
Right.
Who's this guy with it? Don't worry about that.
No. Just right here. Right here. Yeah.
Have you ever been there before where you have friends and they're exhibiting like a belief that you're just like, I can't just let that go? Like what?
Well, most recently, I was playing golf with a group of people, and several of them were people I don't know. And I was sitting after the round of golf, we were sitting at a table, and a picnic table, and they were talking about police. And they were saying how they called the police, and the police actually came and harassed somebody, and that was a good thing or whatever. And I'm listening to this, and I'm taking it in, I'm thinking, am I hearing what I'm hearing? So I just said to them, I was like, so you're telling me that you think it's good that you called the police, who are your friends, and that they intervene in this way that was like, and you think that's a good thing? And they said, yeah. And I looked at my
So
friend.
they were using their privilege of connection with police to be hostile and unfair to other people.
Yeah, it was galling. So I'm like, well, I don't know them. I don't even know their names. I mean, they're friends of a friend of mine, and I don't like this. So I just looked at my friend and I said, it was really lovely spending the day here. Thank you so much for inviting me to play golf. I'll see you another time. And I just got up and left.
Wait, so was it a clear message of, I don't like what this person just said?
It'd be hard to imagine that they wouldn't have picked that up.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
You don't do stuff like that.
I rarely do stuff like that.
But that voice you just said, I've heard that before. Wait, so am I hearing this right?
Yeah.
Like, I've heard that voice before.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Did your friend talk with you about?
No, I didn't say a word. I wonder if he was embarrassed by their...
I mean, I know who you're talking... I don't know the friends of the friends, but I know who you're talking about.
What I'm talking about. Yeah.
I even know the day that this happened.
Yes, you do.
That's amazing. You didn't tell me about this.
No, I didn't. Yeah, it's just...
That should have been a highlight, because I was hanging out with you later that day.
Yeah, that's right.
You should have been like, oh my God, earlier.
Yeah.
Da-da-da. So wait, tell me what was that they were saying. I want to drill down, because I'm having a hard time understanding what they're even saying.
There was, it was something.
Was it like a neighbor or something? Or
somebody, let's see, what are they? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But it was clearly using the cops as your personal, like, security detail to
like
harass.
your thugs, really.
Your thugs, yeah.
Yeah.
To intimidate somebody.
Like your personal mafia or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And the cops were happy to do it because they happened to be your friends.
Yeah.
I was,
and it wasn't something illegal. It was like...
No. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to sell drugs or, No, it was clearly something just personal that they just didn't like.
Yeah.
And so they used the cops as thugs.
My God.
And I can't remember the details.
I mean, my God, all the way around. Obviously, the friend of the friend, but also the cops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you communicated. Are you happy with the way you communicated?
Oh, yeah, I love it. Yeah. Totally polite. But self-respect comes first.
Yeah.
And I don't really care about how these guys see me because they're not friends of mine. They're not important to me. And I didn't want to alienate my friend.
Yeah.
And I didn't. But I let everybody at that table know.
God, it's so weird.
It's not okay with me.
I had my 2 stories that pop into my head as we're talking about this also involve cops.
Really?
Yeah. The first one was, again, a friend of a friend.
Yeah. And
we were out downtown Bellevue, and he was a cop, this friend of a friend. And he was talking about, this was years ago. This would have been like 7-8 years ago, way before Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow we got into it, and I thought I could reason with him about bias against black and brown people, because he's a white guy in Auburn, cop in Auburn,
Uh-huh.
which has a lot of Native Americans as well, you know, because of the Muckleshoot. And I was under the assumption that he was a human being and understood that racism is a thing. And within a pretty short amount of time. So at first I remember I was just kind of like, well, I'm not going to back down. And we're sitting right across from each other in a booth. So there was 4 of us sitting at a booth. And so it wasn't like I could just say, well, I'm going to drift off. You know, I'm locked in just sitting right across from the guy.
Yeah.
And my other friends were having a conversation, and I was having a conversation with him. And within about 15 minutes, I just kind of said, well, I think you're stupid. And I think you're being racist. And I think that you're the problem. You know, again, this is way before Black Lives Matter. If it was after, I'm guessing he wouldn't have said what he said.
Probably not.
And I'm sure I said stupid things too, because I'm not a police officer. I don't know all the different ins and outs, but the general gist, because there was this shooting that happened in Yakima or somewhere out there, Wenatchee, where this was, I don't know, like 10 years ago, and there's video footage of it, and I remember watching it shortly before I met up with him, and it's this guy who clearly is having some kind of mental illness episode, and he is walking around downtown Yakima, I think, and he's throwing rocks at cars. And they call the police, and he's just standing on this busy intersection, just like throwing rocks at cars. And the police show up, and they pull their guns, and he starts walking away, and he's unarmed, and he's like in shorts and a t-shirt. I don't even know if he has shoes on. He's walking down the sidewalk, and there's like a dozen cops with their guns drawn. Wow. And instead of using a taser, and instead of doing something else, and there's no one around him, there's no other humans, there's maybe a couple cars. The guy bends down to pick up another rock, a small little rock, and they just gun him down and kill him. And so I present this to this cop that I'm talking to across from me at this booth, and I'm like, surely there's another option available. He's like, no. He's like, the cops did everything right. I'm like, gunning down someone who's unarmed, who just has like some rocks in their head. He's like, the rocks, you could kill someone with a rock.
Well, yeah.
You throw a rock at someone's head, you could kill someone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he was like 30 yards from any other human.
Yeah.
And he is essentially vandalizing people. And he's not throwing rocks off of a freeway, which I could understand maybe, because you could kill someone if you throw a rock. Dangerous. He was throwing rocks at cars that were going like 10 miles an hour at a busy intersection in Yakima. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but and maybe I'm wrong about the circumstances, but his attitude was total, 100% unambiguous. It was completely just and the right thing to do to kill that man.
That's unbelievable.
Who was clearly having a mental health illness episode. He wasn't someone who was out to hurt anyone.
Yeah.
There was something going on with him. Yeah. And a taser at least.
Yeah, right.
Or, I don't know, a net. I don't understand why cops don't have nets.
There's several of you. It's probably not going to be too hard to disarm.
Yeah.
And then
detain. Pull up your britches and, take a rock to the chest and tackle the guy. You know what I mean? Like other countries, that's what they do. I don't know. I'm not a police officer. But we get into this. We're 15 minutes in. By now we're yelling at each other.
Oh, yeah.
And this goes on for 45 minutes.
Wow. 45 minutes, that's a long time.
Long time.
For somebody you don't know.
Yeah. And, I kind of knew him from previous interactions. And meanwhile, my other friends, who I'm actual friends with, are like, Kirk, can you just, like, cool it down? And I'm like, no. Because I was bumping up against what Black Lives Matter had been bumping up against for decades. And what Black Lives Matter, it took years of advocacy to finally like wake America up to the problem. Right. I was bumping up against that, and I'd bumped up against it before, but not a lot. And the absurdity and the assumption and the privilege and the anti-human aspect of the attitude and the abuses and the justification, the internal, because that was bothering me was like, I would be okay if he was like, well, it's kind of a nuanced situation. There was none of that. It was like, no, he was gunned down, completely justified, and if I was there, I would have shot him too. And there's no there's no debate here. There's nothing we can talk about. It is what it is, and you non-police officers need to understand that we're the professionals and you need to listen to us. It was that kind of attitude of like,
Damn.
So there's no discussion here. And it's like, no, there's no discussion. He deserved to die, and he should have been died. And 1,000 other times, if it happens, he should be gunned down. A guy with some pebbles who isn't near any other human beings, who's clearly having some mental health issues, and a brown. Oh, so I haven't mentioned Mexican American.
Oh.
Okay.
Sure.
And you know, so there's that.
Yeah. Right.
So Elizabeth, patron Elizabeth.
What was the question?
What do I do? So I have, Elizabeth saying, I have friends who I feel like I've kind of grown out of their behavior.
That's right.
And I'm trying to imagine what it is. It's maybe like dating behavior, maybe, or racist attitudes.
Oh, okay, great.
Or something.
Yeah.
My other story is more akin to this story, more relevant, which is, again, friends of friends, police officers. So I have friends who are police officers, and I'll hang out with them, and they're really good old friends of mine. And they have friends who are police officers also. And so sometimes it's a big crowd, and we'll be hanging out, and these police officers, Seattle cops, by the way, using the N-word and saying other like completely racist things. And this is recent. So I'm
Really?
I'm a grown man, and I'm a podcaster.
Yeah.
And I got stuff to say.
You do.
And I'm not going to back down.
Nope.
But I didn't say a word because it wasn't my venue.
Mm-hmm.
If they were in my house, obviously I would, but I'm in a completely, I'm the extra wheel. You know what I mean? Like, they get together all the time, and I'm this complete outsider in the situation. It doesn't justify my wimpiness, but it does provide some context. And I'm listening to this happen, and I'm thinking, did I just hear what I thought I heard? People using the N-word? What is happening right? Like, can you remember the last time you heard someone using the N-word? Like, in person and in a racist manner?
No.
Like, just take a guess. When was the last time you heard someone say that?
I don't even know.
Yeah, there's a possibility I've never heard someone. I mean, I don't know about Pennsylvania, but in Seattle, it's just not really a thing you hear very often.
Oh, no, you
not
hear it
that
in
Seattleites
Pennsylvania.
aren't racist, because they are, but
They're the other kind.
But it's not. It's just not something that is in the culture up here. Like, it's just not a thing that people would use that word. People do, and I know people in Seattle be like, "Oh my God, I hear it all the time."
Yeah.
But where I grew up in Sammamish, it just wasn't a thing. And so I can't remember a time other than this time recently and they were police officers.
Wow, that's awful.
And they know the other thing is they know they're being heard by me, and they know I'm a therapist and a professor. Like, they weren't ignorant of what I did. And I was the only person of color in this whole group. And they also know I'm a person of color. So
do you think they were targeting you? Like, they wanted you to know or hear?
There's an element of that possibility where it was like some drunken hostility to this outsider who's kind of ruining their party a little bit. Because without me, I think it would have been worse. Because they knew I was there, and they knew that they're not idiots. They're like, well, he probably, as a professor in psychology, he's probably not like hip with us using the N-word in this way. I'm just going to take it. But for them to do it like right in front of me, but they're cops, so they got to do what the hell they want, right?
Yeah.
And it's just sickening. And, we know that there are some cops, Seattle cops, who were part of the January 6th criminal act upon the Capitol.
We do?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of cops. Seattle police forces, there's hundreds of. So on average, you're going to it's a bell curve.
Sure.
So it's not unusual.
No,
but,
I don't know why I'm saying what I'm saying. Yeah.
But there's also, I think, a fair amount of, I don't know what to call it, like old school, traditional assholery that is perpetuated within the culture of certain police departments. I don't know that for sure, but anyway.
Yeah.
So, Elizabeth, what I'll tell you is I'm in the same position that you're in is like, I'm not going to stand for this, but I don't feel safe or like I have the power to say anything. And if I just stand up and call them out on it, I don't know them well enough, but I'm pretty sure they just tell me to go to hell and they'd say, get out of here. You're the extra, leave. Like you're ruining our little racist pocket, and, but I didn't do anything. What I did do is I'm just never hanging out with these people anymore.
Yeah, right. Why would you?
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Yeah. I mean, I'll still hang out with my friends who are in that group who I've never heard them say anything like that, or at least recently. But those others, like, I don't know what to do.
Well, we don't know if Elizabeth is unsafe speaking her mind. It might be that it's really useful for her self-respect to say something as she exits. We can't tell from the email if the friends are workable. They might be workable. And it might be, I like the idea of investigating that before you cut ties. Let's not presume that it would be dangerous for you to use your voice. It may not be, or that they would be uninfluenceable.
Right.
I mean, we can't tell from
right. I mean, the way that she's emailing in, it seems like that's a possibility because these are friends that she likes to hang out with.
It does seem like a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it might be true. In which case, then just cut ties. End hopeless relationships. If they truly are hopeless, and they, why? Like this is like how you are. You're like, well, if I don't want to go, I'm not going.
Yeah. So in rereading her email just now, so surface level fun type relationship. So if I can relate to this, I would say, friends I was friends with in college, where it was sort of group based, where none of them I was really that connected to, and we would just, as a crowd, we were friends. There'd be one-on-one conversations, but it's mostly like surface fun stuff.
Yeah.
But I felt, fairly close to all of them, really.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times when I'd get older and I'd just be like, I don't know if I feel like I've sort of gone beyond this attitude, and if I were you, Elizabeth, based on what I'm thinking you're in, I would absolutely, as Bob said, just tell him, just be like, hey, I value our friendship for the most part, and I don't know how deep our relationship is, but at the same time, there are some things that I just see you saying or doing that it just kind of bugs me, and it makes it hard for me to hang out. And I don't want to be a jerk face, but I'd love it if you just didn't do that or changed your assumptions or whatever that's underpinning this kind of attitude.
Right. It's nice.
But I like you and I want to be friends with you.
This is a great assertion.
Yeah. So I go to these guys and say, so I don't know you that well, but I kind of like hanging out with you. But, I think your complete adherence to racism and using the N-word is just not very cool. There was almost like this childhood, and they were older than me, for the record.
Yeah.
There was this childish giddiness about using the N-word. It was almost like, I got the impression that when they're at work among people that they don't know, they can't say it. But then now that they're at this fun activity and they're among like trusted friends, it was this badge of, or this license of, we're letting our hair down.
Yeah.
And so now we can just say whatever we want. And you and I will do that sometimes, right? We'll be with each other or with others, and we have license to express ourselves in ways that we wouldn't be able to, like on the podcast, for example.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be in that direction. It would just be more like, I don't know, just more crude or maybe a little vulgar or something.
Yeah.
But
not racist.
But not right. And I just thought, really? That I find it bizarre that racist individials are so obsessed with the N-word. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for me, it just doesn't come up.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
I'm saying I think that they have an itch that can only be scratched by saying that word. Do you know what I mean?
Right. What does that do? Like that's functional.
It's like some weird collective tick that they have.
Yeah. What do you think it is though? Like if I have restless leg syndrome, my leg wants to move and then I get relief. I wonder what they're getting from, tossing that one around.
Well, that's a good question. I think I have a tentative answer, which is they have like a big, gross, disgusting, like when a grape falls in your living room and kind of drifts into the corner and it picks up all that dirt and lint, and you pick it up and you're just like, oh, I mean, it turns like a juicy, sweet grape into like the most disgusting ball of fuzz. Yeah. And there's no amount of cleaning you're going to give to that grape and eat it. Like it is like, it's like, oh, inside of them is that in the form of racism and white supremacy. Yeah. There's a ball of just disgusting notions and insecurities, frankly, of I am white and I am superior and I am better, I'm smarter, I'm more refined, I am the chosen, and it's weird to think that way, but there's a fair amount of white people who think that.
Oh yeah,
because society taught us that sort of thing.
Sure.
As a related thing, I remember when I was a kid, I don't know, like 7 years old, and I remember the moment I'm lying in bed trying to fall asleep, and I'm reviewing all of the jobs of the world, and I'm like, the best basketball player is a guy, the best doctor is a guy, the best politician, man, best football player, man, even the best cook. Women are because I'm just absorbing gender. Women are in the kitchen, but the best cook is a man. Mm-hmm. Men are better than women at everything. Mm. And I'm 7 years old. No one's talking to me about sexism or anything. Mm-mm. And I'm like, huh. And I'm a boy. I'm a male. So I am part of the superior gender. I remember at 7 just sort of piecing this together because that's what society was telling me and that's what society was representing for me. Sure. I didn't understand the sexist and patriarchy underpinnings that make it so that as a woman you can't rise to the level of
you were 7
of best chef, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of white guys walking around going,
right,
we ruled the world. We were the one who colonized. We invented computers. We invented atomic bombs. We went to space. We own all of the, all the Forbes 500, most of them white guys. Mm-hmm. I am superior, but I'm being told by Seattleites that I can't think that way. And there's this tension inside of them, this tension of like, but I am superior. And I know, and not only I'm superior, but they are inferior. I know they're inferior. I know they have no class. I know they're stupid. I know they make bad choices because of their race. Like, this is how they think. But I can't say that because I'd get in trouble. But I know it to be true.
Oh.
And now that I'm with my, fellow comrades,
sure.
we can all agree that they are inferior and that they have no class and that they are uneducated and that, I could say all the stereotypes, but I won't because of triggering, but they, black men are blah, 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 black women are blah, blah, blah. And saying the N-word, it feels like I'm finally able to itch the itch that I'm walking around all day with but I can't itch it because my wife doesn't even agree with what I'm saying, but I'm with my fellow white supremacists, and now I can do it. And of course, this has been happening in America for hundreds of years.
Sure.
Hence the reason why they put hoods on and would meet in the middle of the night in the woods, because they couldn't express their white supremacy in polite society, you know, as easily as they could when they're in the woods,
sure.
you know.
Wow.
And we still live there. We still live.
Yeah. No, we do. Yeah. We all need a hobby.
What do you mean?
Like spending my time thinking in these ways just sounds.
Yeah.
It sounds yucky. I don't even like talking about this because I'm a white guy, and I'm not going to hit the right level of strike the right chord. So I think I kind of want to just stop talking about it. Not because I don't think it's important. I think it's really important. I don't think that I have anything to add that is all that terribly useful.
Well, I know you as a white man who would never think this way. So I'll say that. But yeah, I mean, this is what we are as people of color bumping up against in subtle ways all the time. And then when I see that behind the scene, you know, I was let into the star chamber, you know, I was let into the secret club. And then I heard the police, the white, and these aren't just like run of the mill police officers. These are like high ups.
Really?
Oh yeah. I can't even say the, you know, the ranks because it might like identify.
Right,
We're talking like high up in the hierarchy.
Who the hell do you know?
What?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Like when they ask for comments from police officer, they are the one that they're on TV. You know what I mean? These are people that represent the voice of the police officers.
Oh, that's terrible.
And to be let in as a person of color, and to hear this and go, oh yeah,
right,
yeah, that's you know, because so much of it is subtle, you know, profiling. It's like, was I profiled? You know, was I, or am I just paranoid?
You mean you walking into that house, say, and listening to these guys?
No, like when I was younger, I'd get pulled over a lot.
Oh, that, yeah.
And I would say, am I being profiled?
Right.
Or is it not that? And, you know, and I'm pretty light skinned, so it's maybe less of a thing. But, if, you know, of course, if you're black, was I pulled over because of profiling, or was I just unlucky? And and then you hear about this and you're like, oh no, I was being profiled.
Yeah. Right.
Did they shoot because they were just doing their job, or did they shoot because I'm a brown person, or that person was brown? You know, it's hard to know. You can't get inside someone's mind until you go behind closed doors and you hear them talking.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's unambiguous racism there.
Wow.
That you don't need to know anymore beyond that, you know? Like, of course, when you see a black person, when you arrive on the scene, I'm just going to take a guess and say that you're not unbiased when you approach those people.
Just taking a guess. Right? Yeah. Oh, man.
And, you know, in relation to what we were talking about earlier in terms of anger, it's like Black Lives Matter is a expression of anger.
Yeah.
And a just one, and an understandable one, and one that's been going on for a long time. You know, Black Lives Matter didn't invent the anger against oppression and police brutality against BIPOC people. No. It's been going on for a long time. Black Lives Matter is just the most recent and powerful iteration of it. And you know, bless them for, you know, because I don't know if you remember this, but when Black Lives Matter first emerged into, you know, the internet, I don't know, like 6 or 7 years ago, it was pretty much generally ridiculed. It was, even by liberals, I would find that pretty much everyone was saying, oh, come on, Like, let it go, or stop cutting off traffic, or, you know, because they were protesting, they were trying to gain, you know, that's what you do. When the system won't listen to you, you have to grind the system to a halt in order for people to listen. When you do all the normal things like asking for help or writing articles or saying, hey, we need to do something, or trying to vote people in the office, and nothing changes for decades and decades, then you have to throw something at a building. You have to stop traffic. You have to interrupt someone at a you know, because I don't remember this, but like this would have been maybe 8 years ago when Bernie Sanders was in Seattle, and I think it was Seattle, and Black Lives Matter people interrupted him at a speech. Do you remember this? Oh, anyway, so Elizabeth, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I like Bob's advice of just, you know, if you value the friendship, just say, hey, you know, I like you, but I don't want you to do this anymore.
Also, self-respect. If you value your self-respect and that would help, then yeah, rehearse
and get a cue card friend.
Yes,
because
you deserve it.